Nootropic is a kind of loosely defined term. There's ambiguity of definition, but it generally means a chemical that increases some aspect of cognitive function. Maybe it's a focus or memory or creativity or something, but increases some aspect of cognitive function beyond your normal healthy baseline without meaningful side effects. So we're used to things that can increase cognitive function back to baseline if you had some kind of deficit, cognitive decline or whatever. And we're used to the idea of something that can be enhanced beyond baseline, but with meaningfully negative side effects like amphetamines that can increase focus. So the idea of nootropic was, can we understand some of the mechanisms that cognition operates through neurochemically and be able to support those in ways that don't create meaningful side effects or externalities? The term was coined with the development of a chemical called piracetam that really started out a whole new category of drug research, racetams and then ampakines, and mostly they were receptor site modulators for certain neurotransmitters. Smart drugs is a related but slightly different word, which generally means pharmaceuticals that have some cognitive enhancing potential. These are usually either drugs for narcolepsy or for ADD or for certain kinds of depression or certain kinds of neurodegen issues like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. And so we'll look at things like Adderall, modafinil, Wellbutrin, Deprenyl. And these are things that can increase some aspect of cognitive baseline, but oftentimes do have some meaningful consequences. So the risk-reward is a tricky thing to consider. Nootropic is also in contradistinction to the term brain nutrient, which is just fundamental nutrients that we need dietarily that many people don't get enough of for optimum, even though they're not in acute deficiency. They're in kind of what we call subclinical deficiency. And so this is the right fatty acids, the right amino acids, minerals, vitamins that support normal brain function. Those aren't going to bring you beyond baseline because the body's going to convert as many as it actually needs and then not more, but they will keep you at optimum baseline or bring you back to it if there's deficit. So the Qualia actually involves key brain nutrients that are actually needed for the way some of the nootropic ingredients function. They're key cofactors or transform factors and that are chronically at suboptimal levels, and then include some things that would be more in the nootropic category, some of which are synthetic, some of which are plant-derived.
I've been exploring the space for about a year and a half, and I have to say that my own personal experience with Qualia has been very noticeable and very impressive. We've not discussed this before, so for the listener, Daniel is hearing my feedback for the first time on air. My experience with Qualia has been different, I would say, than with other nootropics I've tried. First, let me discuss energy. When I take it, I feel a calm energy that lasts. I don't experience a drop-off like you get with caffeine. I don't feel overstimulated either, so that's really an ideal situation. Next, my focus is stronger with it. I feel like I can take a dip in the afternoon, though my energy doesn't necessarily flag. So I think it's just a sign that my brain wants to take a break and go for a walk. So I try to attend to that, but it's still a different feeling than simply feeling exhausted by work. My ability to task switch is improved, which is actually a huge impact on my productivity because in today's world, there's just a lot of task switching that we all need to do with email and notifications, etc. Also, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy, but I even wake up in an annoyingly good mood. But I actually experienced a mood elevation with Qualia. How did I notice? Well, I caught myself saying hi to random strangers more on the street, generally just feeling more outgoing. And at first I was a little worried about this because things that can elevate mood also are subject to a reduced mood later, but I didn't experience a dip in either the day of taking it or during the weekends when I don't take Qualia. And on that note, you instruct people to take the weekend off from taking it, which I do. But again, I didn't feel the dip in energy, focus, mood, which indicates to me that what you've created really supports the health of the entire system versus trying to squeeze all the cognitive enhancement out of one pathway, leaving you feeling depleted later. And lastly, I also noticed that I have really good sleep when I'm on Qualia. But even on the days where I don't get what I consider to be adequate amount of time in bed, so for me that's about 7.5 hours, I am less sleepy and more capable the next day when I take Qualia than I am when I don't. So there you go. There's a live testimonial for you.
I'll share a couple things on that.
Yeah.
First, 2 disclaimers on our side. One is not a drug.
Right.
Can't treat anything and is not prescribed for any diagnosed things, etc. This is a supplement without FDA classification
Right.
for any drug stuff. Second thing is that we are absolutely not recommending it as a way to deal with lack of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
As far as general lifestyle optimization goes, exercise matters, food matters, mindset matters, being outdoors matters. There's a lot of things that matter. We would probably put sleep in its own category and everything else in the second category in terms of just how important it is for overall physiology repair. And one of the things that we push heavily is to really support people getting enough and good quality sleep, and that Qualia works radically better in well-rested people than in people that are dealing with some sleep deficit. So just that public service announcement.
Yep, and I agree with that fully. As a sleep researcher, there is nothing that's been identified that replaces the need for sleep. What I would say is that I think I perform better, but that does not encourage me in any way to then cheat sleep. There is a exponential benefit to getting better sleep and then having quality in my system than getting not enough sleep on a regular basis.
Totally. If someone is getting insufficient amounts of sleep acutely rarely, then we're going to deal with that much better than chronic sleep deficit.
Yeah.
Even if we're only talking about an hour less than the person actually needs, but over a period of time, that can really start to have profound effects. So
yeah.
Moving on to the effects you experience, I'm delighted because you said things that related to most of the goals we had in the development of this particular product. So one thing that we said was essential to our focus was how do we upregulate regulatory capacity rather than upregulate particular state, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a way then creates external dependence. And so we saw how many people were using Adderall, not even on prescription for appropriate purposes, but off-label as a way to get through midterms or finals or their tech startup or whatever. And it's a dopamine agonist, but it is, one, it's going to be flatlining your dopamine while you're on it, as opposed to having your dopamine responsive, your dopamine regulatory system responsive to what's happening, because we don't want the same dopamine levels all the time, right? Or any neurotransmitter. We want them to be responsive so our state can shift to be appropriate to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Two, it's affecting dopamine without paying attention to its relationship in healthy cognitive function to acetylcholine and to so many other transmitters and then aspects of transmission and postsynaptic D1, D2 receptor sensitivity and et cetera. So you end up getting imbalances in really key ratios and dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And so that will end up looking like it increasing focus, but not increasing key aspects of memory or even decreasing some of them or decreasing things like empathy or presence, right? Mm. And then because you are getting an exogenous override to a key in-chain chemical, it can create dependence and downregulation.
Yeah.
So our goal was the exact opposite. It was, we know people weren't going to use something if they didn't feel it right away. It would just fit in category with all their other vitamins and supplements. So it had to produce the kinds of immediate effects that they were looking for. But we wanted it in a way that would not produce long-term downregulation and that would ideally produce meaningful long-term upregulation while even in the short term having a much wider scope of positive impact. So can we increase focus and concentration and short-term memory and working memory, long-term memory, creativity, analysis, synthesis, all at the same time, and a lot of things that are actually almost opposite functions, like the ability to stay very focused, independent of environmental noise, but then the ability to task switch when one needs a task switch are opposite kinds of functions, but we really want them both, right? Mm-hmm. The ability to have very high drive, but also to be able to let go of it and be empathetically, interpersonally responsive when necessary, analytic and synthetic. And so our focus was, can we do comprehensive brain chemistry in real time that makes people, that upregulates comprehensive capacities, that is also upregulating over the long term. And so those were the things that we saw, and we've been quite happy with what's happened so far.
The one other component to my feedback is that, as you recommend, you take Qualia during the week and then you don't take it on the weekends. I still feel very energetic. I feel my brain is actually even smarter having taken it, but not having it in my system on a weekend. So that would support what your end goal was here.
One thing I'll say about that is the most addictive chemical that's in the stack is caffeine. And that's a chemical whose addiction curve most people are pretty familiar with and is pretty benign. Everyone metabolizes caffeine differently, and some people can drink it daily for quite some time and then not drink it and be fine. Other people will get headaches. And it does have a lot to do with caffeine metabolism, which is genetic and other factors. So what I'd say is this has a relatively small amount of caffeine. We have 90 milligrams, but in a unique form where it's bound to an antioxidant, so the antioxidant from blueberry skins, pterostilbene, which has it basically be slow release. So it feels like 30 milligrams when it kicks on, which is very, very subtle, but then it lasts for quite some time. So instead of getting a spike and a drop off, you get a very subtle long-term effect.
Yeah.
Why it's important to take in the morning again, because it will last longer. For people who are used to drinking a big Starbucks where they've got 150, 200 milligrams of caffeine that kicks in right away, they will still want to do that. They just might downregulate the amount a little bit because this isn't going to match with that amount of caffeine. But on people's off days, we tell people to do 5 days on, 2 days off of Qualia so that they don't desensitize to any of the chemicals that are here. On their off days, if you can't get off caffeine without headaches, then you can still do your coffee or mate or whatever it is on your off days. Caffeine doesn't need cycled as frequently as other chemicals. And so what we'd say is our recommendation is that people should cycle off caffeine if they use it on a daily basis for about 1 week per quarter. So their adenosine cycle gets to reset. The other dynamics that are involved get a reset. And we do find that people will start getting decreased meaningful response from caffeine over longer periods of time. Obviously, there's problems if people are using it again as a replacement for sleep or to push through too much fatigue when they actually need rest.
Yeah.
If people are well rested and they're taking appropriate amounts of caffeine, it can actually be an efficiency increaser metabolically for their system. So we say 2 days off of Qualia each week and 1 week off of all stimulants per quarter.